here, but as I often have in the middle of a sermon, an illustration, a story to tell. Today I do, but I'm not telling that story. Our guest, Stephanie Robinson, who is the volunteer coordinator for The Well, a ministry that we helped to start here in town, is going to do the sermon illustration for me. Grace. Grace. That's our theme for the day. I put part of this quote in your bulletin, but I'm going to read the whole thing to you right now. Quote from this little book called Wishful Thinking by Frederick Buechner on grace. Grace is something you can never get, but only be given. There's no way to earn it, or deserve it, or bring it about any more than you can deserve the taste of raspberries and cream, or earn good looks, or bring about your own birth. A good sleep is grace, and so are good dreams. Most tears are grace. The smell of rain is grace. Let me add something. Maybe the fact that it's raining while I read this is grace. Somebody loving me is grace. Loving somebody is grace. As I said before, it's hard to explain grace. Sometimes you just have to point to it. And so we point to it in the scriptures that we read this morning. We point to it in the Old Testament lesson, remembering that to love our neighbor as ourselves, to even get a glimpse of what that is like. Whether we're doing it or receiving it, that is grace. From the New Testament epistle, to know that all belongs to us, and we to Christ and Christ to God is grace. Because what it says is that all is connected somehow, all woven into the same fabric. And as we move to the gospel, and especially if you remember what I told you last week, that Jesus is using a form of rhetoric where you exaggerate your point to make your point. So if you do not take it literally, that if somebody hits you, you're supposed to let them beat you up. But you understand instead that what he is saying is to go past sometimes our initial reactions. Sometimes to go past the initial reaction of shrinking back from that which might cause conflict. To go beyond our initial reaction of seeing everything that is not like us as something different and to be avoided. And instead to understand that we have a connection to everyone and everything that is. That's what he's saying. And he exaggerates his point to say. And that is grace. And the funny thing about grace is that sometimes we miss it for ourselves because we simply take it for granted. It was grace to get up this morning and to be here for each one of us. It's grace to be able to live in a country where we can come to worship and not be persecuted for it, because there are still places in this world where people are, for whatever religion they follow, persecuted for following that religion. It's grace to be able to hear from centuries past, as we hear Scripture, how God worked in the lives of people. And it's grace to have the opportunity in our own day and time to let God work through us. Because you see, that is the thing about grace. As Paul said, we are the temple of God here. We are the place where the grace of God shines through. And so just as there are places of grace in our own lives that we need to wake up to, there are also opportunities in our own lives for us to be instruments of grace to one another. One such instrument in this town is the Well. It was a piece of grace that we got the building. It was a piece of grace that 32 churches who are just more than willing to argue over all sorts of points of worship and theology understood that there was something more important. It's a piece of grace for each volunteer who walks through those doors. It's a piece of grace for each client that God sends there. And it was a piece of grace that we found Stephanie when the ministry became bigger than we could manage ourselves, to come in and to begin to help us figure out how to get the volunteers to where they needed to be. Many volunteers and not a way to get them to where they needed to be. So Stephanie comes with stories, I think, this morning. Probably stories about clients and volunteers. And this is the way that today, at this point in the service, I'd like for you to think about Grace and Faith County.
Thank you so much to all of you. I was flattered that Gayle asked me to come today. Thanks for listening to me. Actually, I wanted to start off with a little bit of story about Grace in my life and how I ended up at the well, and then I'll kind of tie it all together. So if you're patient with me, maybe you'll be entertained and inspired. I am originally from Fayette County. I left here after I graduated and went to college at Ohio Dominican. Finished my 4 years there. My third year there, I met what was to be my future husband. During my senior year, my husband asked my father out to lunch one day, and the purpose of that meeting was to ask for my hand in marriage. And at that meeting, I came to find out later that my father was very willing. I came with a warning. And my future husband was warned that I was very particular about things. My dad said I like to have all of my I's dotted and my T's crossed, and then once I had my mind made up about something, you better just get out of the way. And 17 years later, I'm sure my husband would attest to that fact. In our 17 years of marriage, we were very pro-life, so we felt a calling to not only talk the talk, but walk the walk. We are the parents of 8 children. We have welcomed 6 daughters and 2 sons in our 17 years of marriage. And that is also another way where we made up our mind, and through the grace of God, many days of reaching out for help, guidance, opening ourselves up to things, that we have sort of answered God's call. So as I was busy raising 8 children and taking care of things, the well got started. There was a group of people in this community who had an inspiration to come together and fill the needs of our brothers and sisters here in this community. So through the inspiration of Craig and Amanda Pickrell, they offered the building. The people came together. Gayle is one of our board members. She came and offered anything that she could. And like Gayle said, we got 32 churches on board. And I have to tell you, I've been to many places speaking about the well, and every time I go to some place, they always tell me that I always hear from someone that there was a naysayer who said there is no way that 32 denominations in a community can come together and stop arguing over the small stuff in order to accomplish something like this. And each one of those people, though they admit to being a naysayer, has attested to the fact that what has been accomplished at the well has been a tremendous thing. So I was busy raising children and was approached last July by a board member, Paul Andres. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Paul. He is a parishioner at St. Coleman's, as am I. So he stopped me after daily mass one day and he said, you know what, we were talking at a board meeting and we need someone to tie all of this together. We have this wonderful ministry happening and we don't know where to put people. We need to all be on the same page. And he said, I think you would be, a great person for that job. So I prayed about it, thought about it, and I made up my mind, and I jumped in. And I went through the interview process and was thrilled that they offered me the opportunity to help. So I developed my plan. I know how I'm going to attack this situation. I know exactly how I'm going to do it, and I have it all laid out. And lo and behold, after spending some time there, I'm usually there for all of the ministries because I really had a vision of my job as being one of relationships, not only with volunteers but with clients. So as I'm spending time there, I see all of these amazing things happening, and I finally realize I'm not doing anything. I am an instrument. I have been put in this place at this particular time to fill a need, yes, but not only for the well, for myself, because I can't tell you how I have grown and changed in the experiences with our clients. And to kind of illustrate this, I want to share a story with you about one of our volunteers, but also about some clients. Shortly after I started at the well, which is in July, that fall I had a volunteer came in, and her name is Helen. And Helen came to me, and she's in her early 50s, and she suddenly lost her husband of a heart attack. It was sudden, no warning, and she is heartbroken. So she wanted to fill her time volunteering at the well. She needed to do something. And Helen is a regular Tuesday night volunteer at our meal program. So I see her regularly once a week, and every time I see her, she talks to me, shares with me about the process of grieving and where she's at and the things that she's going through. But she's so grateful to have the well, because she has recognized what I now recognize. It's not just about the people that we're serving. That's how the ministry got started. But everybody who comes to the well takes something away from the well. And sometimes we take things away that we don't even realize that we needed. But it's that slow, steady process of making ourselves available to grace, opening ourselves up to opportunities where we realize that we're being fed. So Helen comes to the well once a week, pours herself out, and realizes that she's being filled up to go out and continue in her life, which now, she's widowed young. She has her children to support her, but so Helen's been a wonderful grace in my life to even meet her. A couple of weeks ago, we had some clients, and they come in regularly, at least probably once a week. The free store's open twice a week. They come in once a week usually. And they left on Thursday. Well, that next Tuesday, they came back in. And they came back in with a paper from the Red Cross. And it was an emergency paper that they had spent some time at the Red Cross. You see, when they left the well on Thursday, they went home to find their house on fire. And they don't know now if they're going to have a place to live. The landlord is going to take the insurance money, but they're not sure that he's going to fix their house. And they can't find any place that is, within they're both on disability, they're both disabled, helping to support a daughter who recently lost her job, who also has a daughter. So it's the four of them, and they don't know what they're going to do. So they came in just for some basics. They needed sheets, towels. We were able to give them cleaning supplies, toiletries, those kinds of things. But in the meantime, while we were gathering those things up, they just needed someone to talk. So I sat with them for probably an hour, and they shared with me, and they shared the fact that they had recognized that there has been something lacking in their life. And they realized that it's their relationship with Christ. So I've talked to them a couple times since, and they're really trying to make a commitment to include God more in their lives. But in the meantime, they're continuing to come to the well to fulfill temporal needs. But we find more often than not, the temporal needs are the easy part to fill. It's the spiritual needs and the relationships that we build at the well through volunteers and clients. Because the interesting part about the well is that it's a place where everybody comes together to share. It's never about the stuff. It's always about people and the relationships and what we can build together as brothers and sisters of Christ. So I also wanted to share with you, we do have, I think most people are familiar the most with the free store that we have. Our free store is open on Tuesdays and Thursdays now from 9 to 11 a.m. We have lots of places for volunteers and are always willing to give you a spot to fill your time. And also any donations are always greatly appreciated. Children's clothing is a tremendous need in our community. I think all of us who are parents understand that kids grow constantly and things change and wear out, and so that's always a need to fill. We also have a wonderful program that kind of goes hand in hand with the free store. It's called Loads of Love. Loads of Love provides 2 volunteers, quarters and laundry soap at Sunshine Laundry twice a week, on Tuesdays from 5 to 8 p.m. and on Wednesdays from 11 to 2. And I have a really small but dedicated group of volunteers who participate in that. And it allows clients to do as many loads of laundry as they have people in their family. And we have found that through that ministry, the people who come to the free store to fill their needs for clothing, it empowers them to keep the things that they take away clean. We found that a lot of people were coming to the free store once or twice a week, and that's what they had for the week to wear. So through adding the Loads of Love ministry, we allow people the opportunity to do their own laundry. Those are things that we all take for granted, or even dread. I'm sure we all have that dread of the full laundry basket sometimes. But I find that the volunteers who participate in that program have also built some really great relationships. There's a lot of downtime when you're in the laundromat. So there's been a lot of great relationships and stories that have come out of just laundry, you know, just the simple things. We also have a free meal on Tuesday evenings that requires volunteers to serve the meal. Usually volunteers are there from 5 to 7, but we serve dinner from 5:30 to 6:30. And with our kitchen just being completed, that hopefully we're prayerful that that's going to expand to another night during the week, so we'll need people to staff that. And that's also a wonderful opportunity. People are always willing to share themselves over a meal. I know that's been a great place for me to get to know some of the clients and understand some of their needs and where they're coming from. And so we also have Angel Food Ministries. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Angel Food. Angel Food is a Christian co-op that's open to anyone. And there's a monthly menu put out of different varieties of food. It's all prepackaged, comes in a box. And it offers sort of the buying power of a co-op. So it helps families who are, you know, in need. And I think most of us like to stretch our dollar too. It offers families the opportunity to stretch their food buying dollars so that they can make things last, you know, especially with families. There are some things in there that are tailored specifically for families. And that's growing. We're trying to promote that, especially to schools. We find a lot of need for, you know, children to have their hunger needs met. So any time that you would like to come and visit with us, I encourage you to do so. The only thing that I always tell volunteers that I require of them and that I think God requires of them is an open mind, because I have found that through ministry at the Well, I think so many of us in this country have an idea of poverty, and it's sort of been ingrained in us through our culture, I think. We have this idea that poverty is somehow a sign of failure, or that we can educate it away, or that there's something wrong with it. And the Lord assured us that the poor will always be among us. So sometimes I think the biggest part is just meeting people where they are. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to teach you a lot more than you can teach them. I promise you that. Also, I think that we should always remember to have a servant's heart when we come to the Well. And thirdly is a smile to share with somebody else, because we never know when we're at the Well, the people that we see, that might be the only positive, loving contact that they have for a day. And we see people come in that are involved in abusive relationships, and we see homelessness and all kinds of amazing things. And a smile and a hug and just looking someone in the eye and spending some time with them won't change just them, but it can certainly change you. So plenty of opportunities to volunteer. If you don't have the time to volunteer, we certainly take donations. We take donations of money, but also I can't express to you the need for basic things like cleaning supplies, soaps, toiletries, laundry detergent, toilet paper, any of those kinds of basic needs. But also, most importantly, please always keep this ministry in your prayers. We are doing and accomplishing tremendous things through the grace of God and the relationships that we form, and we so appreciate you holding us up in prayer. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you for all you do with the Well. To close this part, I just want to tell you one more story. Those are certainly stories of grace. One early morning board meeting, 7 o'clock in the morning, once a month. We meet for a couple of hours over at the well for our board meeting. It was a day when a lot of us were frustrated because it was before we had brought Stephanie on board, or maybe just right after, before you really gotten in the saddle, so to speak. And it just seemed like there were more needs than we could meet, and wondering if we were even doing any good. And it happened that at the meal the week before, the paper plates had been passed out, and people were given the opportunity, if they wanted to write a comment, anything they wanted to. And somebody had brought the paper plates to the meeting, and one of them in particular they passed around from a woman who had come to the meal and had been coming to the meal every Tuesday. And the paper plate said, "I am a single mother. I hold down 2 jobs, but there's still not enough for me to pay the rent, pay the utilities, and still always have food on the table. If this hadn't been open tonight, my children and I would not have eaten." That's grace. Amen.